Okay then, I want to thank these guys. They've invited me to come and do another interview. Gavin, Sean and Tony are here. They're currently the interim board of our club and fronting the trust takeover. So, first question, obviously, is what is the current progress made with the share scheme?
So, it's good progress. We're quite happy where we are at the moment. As you know, we released a statement a week in, and that was at 37k. We'll be releasing another statement on Thursday, and I think it's safe to say that we're probably not going to be that far off doubling that target, a little bit less probably. Okay. But we're quite comfortable where we are today. I think the difficult thing with it is that we haven't necessarily got a benchmark to know how good it is. So should we have had 100k in the first week? Should it have been 50k, etc.? But our advisors in Supporters Direct tell us that our first week was really, really good, okay. and hopefully when we release a statement on Thursday, we can double where we were, if not a little bit below. But yeah, we're comfortable where we are. I mean, again, and we just need to thank everybody, for their support and what they've put in. We're fortunate that we've got the games at home as well, that we can meet people and people want to meet face to face. So we're happy where we're at the moment. I think is fair to say.
I think I've been impressed by the number of people who've come in the shop and paid and and bought shares. Then I think we had another £900 a day, £1,000 odd yesterday. So it's going, it's coming in quite, steadily.
And I think ideally, any other club or any other time it's been done, it's been over a lot longer period. And so supporters directly saying, well, good God, you're trying to do this over a very short period, which has got implications for people getting hold of that finance where, you'd like to plan for it and maybe spend some money one month and then next another month. So it's been difficult for people from that point of view.
And there's, sorry, I was going to say,
I think obviously the whole should you put in, should you not put in, that sort of whole argument, discussions there, we take that on board. And we are aware of that, but at the moment we need to be kicking on and just progressing and seeing how close and how far beyond that target we can get.
And I was going to add as well that at last Saturday's match we were handing out our benefits package form as well, so people who not necessarily going to put in an amount of money can do the monthly amounts as well, and Sean is looking for feedback on that. But I think the other thing to say, and we wanted to thank you because you've obviously started your scheme on the message board, so the county choir and people who can't necessarily give 50 quid, but actually give
board have their own similar scheme.
Yeah, I think they bought some yesterday.
Oh, good.
Message board,
yeah.
But you're doing a scheme within the county choir where you're saying to people, look, if you can't afford your £50, you can contribute a quid, 2 quid, a fiver, whatever it is, and you'll club it together. And then buy shares accordingly, which we think is fantastic and good for you to do that.
The purpose of that is to bring a band of fans together and just do something collectively, which is, is the message. Basically, is we got collectively as a supporters fan base, got to come together. So that's basically the purpose behind it.
That's brilliant, mate.
And we're really grateful for that. It's a great initiative. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we raise something that's going to make something of contribution.
Well, I think in our minds, the base figure is 50 quid. Any contribution is fantastic.
Of course, yeah.
We're certainly not going to be turning away anybody's contribution in whatever shape and form it is, whether that be volunteering, whether that be a skill set, whether that be in the shares. So we're just very grateful that people are getting behind it.
Brilliant. So how do you feel the reaction has been? How have you foreseen, not foreseen, but how have you overlooked the reaction? What kind of reaction do you think this has sparked from the fan base?
In my mind, and if I'm being brutally honest, I think it is mixed to a certain extent. I think that you look at the different supporters groups like yourselves and others who come behind stuff and are actively supporting it, and many of the supporters groups are doing that, which is fantastic. Tony mentioned the people who are turning up in the club and buying shares through the website and contacting us, etc. That's been fantastic as well. But what we also recognise is that there is a degree of negativity around it because of the legacy debt that is there, and we as a collection, as a trust board, recognise that as well, and we recognise that's quite difficult for people to want to pay that legacy debt back. And as we said on the night, it's down to individuals to make that decision as to whether they want to contribute to the well-being of the club collectively or not. And it's got to be an individual decision from it. So for me, I think, if I was to look at it in percentage terms, I'd say 80% has been fantastic and people are absolutely getting behind it. We've had some great coverage in the Argus and Kev Ward and others have been really supportive of us. And then I think there's probably a 20%, which I get it and I understand it. They're thinking of it saying, well, hang on a minute, why do we have to pay this legacy debt back to people who were running the club in a way at the time which perhaps has contributed to the position we're in? But I look at that in both ways, because that's a positive thing in terms of we're back in the league, and also perhaps some of the negative things in terms of the way that we find ourselves today.
I also think unless you want to start up a club from scratch as a trust, you're never going to be able to just take over without any sort of debt or pay back to previous creditors. So if you look at Wickham, if you look at Wimbledon to a degree, probably a bit different Wimbledon, but if you look at Exeter as well, their creditor amounts that they had to repay was far greater in terms of the way it's structured than ours. So there's always going to be that unpalatableness of what you're actually doing, and I think to try and live with that. And I think it's sometimes as difficult as it might be, it needs to be seen as a debt rather than paying the individual off. Might be hard to get over that because the reality is that's what's happening. But it's a debt that we need to try and work around. But I can understand the difficulties. But also this, to start a club from scratch again, that's not zero cost.
No, exactly.
Probably cost the same now, if not a bit more. But I've been surprised by the one or two comments of people saying they're holding on to their money to see how it goes. It's not going to benefit anybody to do that, If it goes the wrong way, you'll have your money back. If it goes the right way, then you've invested in being part of that. So
and we are aware, mind, and Supporters Direct said there's basically a U which starts off there, and we'll probably have that this home game, hopefully again, and then it'll be a bit of a U, and then when people see a deadline coming, there'll be another spike. So we're aware of that, accept that, and it will be over a period.
And I think the other thing to look at as well is that if you think when we had our first open meeting on the 24th of July, we had 324 members. If you look at it today, there's over 1,500 members that have joined the trust with £10, £7.50, whatever the category is, but actually they've got behind in that way. And of course what we now need to do, and we've been doing, is using that level of information to push out to people, this is how you buy shares, this is how you contribute to the well-being of the club. And I think, for us as a group, we still remain very positive today that we will hit our target, and that's key for us. We're absolutely focused on that. There are some distraction things that are around the side, but we're absolutely focused on hitting that target. That's what we set out to do. That's what we're doing on behalf of the whole supporters base, and we'll continue to do that.
Great. So do you personally feel that you're approaching this with the relevant level of urgency? How would you respond to fans that believe you're not?
I've always thought it's difficult, actually, because every other sort of trust takeover there's been imposed level of urgency, because it's always been, unless you pay this money by this date, then you're going to be wound up. So we've got added difficulty in some ways, as it's urgent, but it's more slow death if we don't get the actual finances in place. So it's quite difficult to generate that sense of urgency as well, when it's deferred urgency, if you like, if there's such a thing. So I think that is inevitably issue and a challenge we got. So in light of that, I think the response has been pretty good.
I mean, in my mind, we had an open meeting where we laid out where the club had been. We introduced our advisors. We then followed that up, obviously, with a series of statements towards that date. We got, as you know, the supporters groups together. We then met again on the 27th and launched our share offer. And within that, it's got a very clear timetable of what we need to raise when. And what we then tried to do with that as well is put out statements along the way to give updates to where we are and what we've now got left to achieve. I think, when you talk about an urgency for it, I think Sean's point is absolutely right in terms of, we've got a date that we need to hit the money by, and we've got a plan to get there. We're trying to, as much as we can, spread ourselves, to the supporters, and getting the messages out there, getting the forms out there, having a bit of visibility in the Snelling Bar and up here in the Bisley Suite as well. But we're always open to feedback, and if people think we need to do different things, then I think there's two things for me. One of which is feed it back to us, and the second thing is if you've got some time to come and help us, then do that as well, because that'll be fantastic and really appreciated.
So, would you say that you've been interacting with fans face to face?
We've always had a
Yes.
presence, haven't we?
Yeah,
I mean, obviously,
The whole
obviously you're playing to people to put money in. Are you actually speaking to them to their face?
Well, I mean, if I look at me personally, then I would probably say to a certain degree I speak more to the groups than I do to individuals. Whereas, if you look at the 11 of us are there, we've then got a presence, as we say, in the Snelling Bar, so the membership folk are there in terms of Phil and Colin, and Sean has been there as well. But I think we're all playing different roles in what we've got in terms of that. I mean, if you look at the day that we did on the 27th, obviously we spoke to 400 odd people in terms of that. Again, it depends what the fans want of us in my mind to a certain extent. I think, we probably could do more. You can always do more, but I think what we probably need from the fans is to say what they would like within that. We're trying to do as much as we can within the numbers that we've got, but again, I think that if people think we're not doing something, tell us what it is, and if they can spare the time to come help us,
I think
it's fantastic.
It's interesting because the last two games I made myself available in Snelling and spoke to people that I'd never met before as well. So that's been good to hear as well. And the whole process actually has been quite good to actually start interacting with fans that I've not been aware of as well. So that spreading out and involving a whole new network of fans, they actually you'd be encouraged that they want to get involved. So I'll be doing the same this Saturday. As long as it's not raining, I'll be inside. But we had some good dialogue there. Met with a few fans as well I didn't know of. They expressed their willingness to contribute and help as well. So we're getting them on board and assisting in certain areas on the technology side and with ideas for business partnerships as well, which we've had. So that's been valuable. So it's again as Gavin said, we've all gone off in different directions and we're doing different stuff at the moment. So
we did discuss an open evening, didn't we? Of having an evening where we're over here for people that want to know a bit more and face us and find out all the information.
It's always one of those difficult things in my mind, because you tend to find if you have an open meeting, then not everybody wants to ask a question. But actually, one thing we have talked about is maybe we did like a bit of a drop-in surgery, whereby we made ourselves available, and there could be 10 of us, there could be 11 of us, and individuals want to have private conversations. They may want to come along and say, well, I've always had shares, I'd like to gift them, how do I go about it? And we've had some of those conversations with people. So I think that's something that, in the couple of weeks that we've got left, that we should, and we have discussed this, as Tony said, that we should look to consider having some drop-in sessions for the things. And what I would probably say is that my missus will probably kill me if I'm not home anymore and giving up any more time.
Look at another evening.
Yeah, but it's all in the
But
good of
it's
the club,
worth it,
so
yeah.
she's very supportive.
I think it's a good point, to be honest, Chris,
Yeah,
and I think we should do it to probably officially launch the benefits and rewards package in the next week or two. So we could have an open evening, perhaps over here or somewhere similar, so we could actually do that and actually give people the background and let people know the importance of it, and they can hand the forms in and consult on the evening.
Yeah.
Even
So
if one
that's
of
good.
you went out onto the pitch just before kick-off and expose yourselves to the...
That would not be a good thing if I exposed myself, or indeed anybody would
Gavin's
expose
the best
themselves.
at
But I
that.
know the point you make there.
Can we have you as a proxy exposer for us?
Yeah. But I think you're right in terms of there's always more that we can do, and the feedback you've given us tonight I think is spot on. We'll take that on board and go away, look at seeing what we can do in and around there, because we are trying to take the club over in difficult circumstances, and it is about survivability of the club and the future of the club without a shadow of a doubt. So no, I think that's really helpful to get that feedback from you.
Okay, no problem. So how has this takeover affected your lives?
Flipping heck.
You've been touching on it a bit, obviously, but...
I think, for me personally, when you do something like this, you probably don't absolutely know what you're going into at first, and the amount of and you know, I'm not looking for anybody to pat me on the back or anything, but the amount of time it pretty much takes over your life in my mind, because it's almost starting from as soon as you get up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, and you know, we've all got day jobs in between it as well, and you know, similar to tonight, you know, we've had a board meeting, we had a meeting last night, so it does have a massive impact. But you know, that said, the reason we're doing it is because we love the club. So you know, we want to do it because it's the right thing to do. If I personally thought we couldn't achieve what we set out to do, I wouldn't be bothering. I wouldn't be wasting the time. I wouldn't be getting some of the challenges you do with everything else that's going on in your life. But for me, it's important that we do this, and I think we are going to achieve it, and I do think it'll sustain a future, you know, for future generations of Newport County supporters.
I think I echo that. You know, it's clear that it's a limited amount of time. You go throw all you can into it on this limited amount of time, and then afterwards, once you've been successful, then you can take a more structured approach. Correct. We're looking to kick off the working groups next week and actually bring more people into the fold, so we can actually start operating like we mean to going forward as well, and putting them platforms in place so that we can progress. So I think it's just one of them things. Once you're in it, you can either walk away from it, which you'd never do because the club's more important, or you can just buckle down and just get through it and work through it, and that's what we're doing. I think difficulty sometimes is to demonstrate visibly that you're doing something. That's a whole problem with this. We probably need to be visible, but apart from probably doing this and speaking to people and trying to put things in place, it is quite difficult to do stuff visible.
As much as it's important, obviously, for fans, you know, to have their feedback read to you so you can respond to it, it's important for the people out there to know exactly what you guys have had to do to get us in this position.
Because, you know, ideally, I don't think we could have, personally, I think we could do more on the marketing side, marketing approach, but then something else would have to drop in that, and you know.
And that's why, as you say, broadening the groups through the governance stuff that we're putting in place is so important. There's so many people who've got different skill sets. You know, one of the reasons, and in fact, if you remember on the share launch evening, one of the fans asked a great question about, you know, you've done some great work, thanks very much, but we know nothing about you. And then we all went through who we were. To a certain extent, actually, it's not about us as individuals, it's about what the supporters groups are doing collectively to try and own the club to a certain extent for me. But there's lots of stuff that goes on, whether it be, you know, phone calls that we're having with advisors, whether it's because we're writing strategy documents, whether we're writing plans, or whatever it may well be. You know, there's lots of stuff that goes on in the background. But, you know, that said, we've got into something that we really believe in and we want to drive through. We still believe that we're going to achieve that, and it does absorb a lot of time. But as I say, everybody does stuff for the club. You know, you do your stuff that you've done. Your good lady over there selling 50-50 tickets the other day. Everybody contributes in their own different way, and sometimes that might not be visible, but actually you know what's going on in the background.
Right, okay. What would you say then to any fans that are currently on the fence? I know you've obviously said a few persuasive things already, but then if you could say something directly to them right now, exactly what would you say to them to get them on the right side?
It's going back to the beginning of why we did it. This is going to be the best ever chance we get to own
possibly
a
only
football
ever
club.
chance.
Possibly the only chance. They've got nothing to lose. You know, they put their money in and buy the shares. If it doesn't go through, they get their money back. If it does go through, they own a football club.
Well,
you know,
one thing I echo on that, it might be the only chance, and there's a downside of the only chance is actually there's something unpalatable that actually goes with that, the only chance. So this isn't particularly an idea that we want to, walking into this situation where there's a legacy debt to have to sort out, but it probably is the only time that a trust is going to be in a position to take over this football club, because if it was everything was running perfect and we're making a profit, no one would give the trust a ring, call and say, give us 50 quid and you can have the club. You know, it's not going to happen. So whilst I do really understand people sitting on the fence, I do really understand their concerns and they're legitimate, but you've probably got to make a decision.
Yeah, and I would add that it depends why they're sitting on the fence. You know, and everybody's got their different reasons for sitting on the fence. What we take from it, the big issue is around the legacy debt, without a shadow of a doubt. And as we say, people got to make individual decisions, you know, around that and on that as to what they want. Is it more important not to give that money back, or is it more important that actually we want to support our own club? And everybody will have a different decision on that. And one thing we've always been mindful of is that we respect that, and people will either make their own choices, as we've made our own choices as well.
Okay. I understand obviously a supporters direct governed supporters trust is structured with democracy, obviously a voting system where the board is concerned. How would you respond to a supporter who would argue that the more shares you buy, the more say you should get?
It's not in the model.
No.
No.
But then there is something that has been fed back to me. It's like,
I
why
think
should one fan put in £500, but another fan could put in 100 grand, but then they'll only get the exact same voters?
Because the ethos of a supporter-owned club is equality, and equality of voice and equality of view, and I think that preset has got to be there, and it can't be based on financial influence.
No, at all. The model is very clear. It is one vote, one share. That's it. And that model is really important. And I guess it's similar to life in general. If I am my age, Tony is his age, does he get more votes in the general election either because he's been on this earth longer than I? Because blatantly he is a lot older than me. But the answer to that is no, because that's the way democracy works. And I think this model is no different in that, and it means that people do have a say in the way that we intended.
It's certainly a model I believe in, and obviously it's a model that you guys believe in. But then obviously there are some people out there that would argue that if someone's going to come in, well, not so much if someone's going to come in with money. If someone wants to come in with £500, another wants to come in with 100,000. There's something wrong there that they'll go with the 100,000.
Well, I guess like most things in life, they need to make a decision based on how their money is going to go into the club, and they will make that decision, based on that. I mean, what I can say is that we haven't got anybody with £100,000 anyway. I'm not aware of.
Not yet, no. Do you know, Chris?
No, if you do know anybody with it.
I did buy a couple of scratch cards earlier.
Yeah. And Glenn's got that case with him again. I don't know who he carries around in there, but I understand the sentiment, and I think again people have got to make decisions around that. But what we are trying to do is to follow the model. We're guided by supporters, directors, our advisors. And that's the model that they've suggested we adopt.
Again, I'd like to see a model developing which is based on the supporters' trust, but with an opportunity to bring perhaps people in business with no money to spend directly to players, so it's actually got to see the actual benefit of it. So their influence and ownership might be diluted on that, but so will their risk. So a lot more fun to play with without having to carry a risk as a single person.
I think it's an important point. It doesn't shut off other type channels that people who may well have that money would want to do something around playing budgets or whatever it may well be. I think that wouldn't be awfully sensible of us to shut that off.
Which hasn't prevented Wimbledon.
No, similar thing.
Wimbledon do a matched funding almost with a share. The trust paying a certain amount, and I think the club, then other individuals can match that towards players.
Speaking of the playing budget, I'm not sure exactly what you could tell me about this, but this is one thing that's been going around an awful lot, is how the Regan pool money's been divided. I understand it was an initial 100k, yet 30k has been deducted from the required total. People are assuming that the remaining 70k is going either into the playing budget or into the pockets of some of our debtors. I don't understand where it could go. Are you able to shed any light on that?
Well, as a club, we can't treat debts preferentially, so that should give a steer on that side. We've tried to be prudent on what we're doing as well, and we tried to make working with Jason and others to actually make some funds available for the manager, but also then give some breathing space on the working capital side. So it's probably a three-pronged approach in that breakdown of that money, really. And it's not, to be open and honest, it's probably not totally scientific. It's not a defined figure, but it's a figure that's helping to stabilise the club.
So does that mean that from the sale of Regan Pool, there will be funds available when the loan market opens?
Yes, that was the original intention.
That was the original intention of the deal. And again, any footballing decision has got to be down to the manager, not to the board. but certainly with the chief exec, you know, the conversations we've had with him in terms of how that money coming in is then going to be allocated. We've had those discussions, and some of that money in percentage terms will be going to the player budget without a shadow of a doubt.
No David either at the moment.
Yes, I think suggest that we do.
Yeah. So going on to the scenario that we complete this takeover, if it's completed, when would the elections take place for the fans elected board?
So we've said, sorry Sean, we've said in the shared document, and I think we've been consistent with this, is that you need to give a period of time for it to bed in.
Yeah.
We think that period of time, if it was the 1st of October and we were successful meeting our ambition, it'll run then until the end of December. And then what we said in the shared document, that we would have incremental elections from January right up to the end of March. And the reason we say incremental ones is that the one thing you don't want to do is to create stability, and then by going through a load of elections the whole board changes, which it could do, and it may well do, and then you're back to where you started, and people are trying to work out, well, was it X, was it Y? So you need a constant through that, which is why we believe that you do need an incremental approach in there. But we're absolutely committed to that. That's what we said we were going to do. That's part of our constitution to do that, and we'll be following that through to that timetable.
So once these incremental elections take place, will there be further elections, like on an annual basis? An annual election.
Must be annual.
I think I can't remember exactly what it says in the share offer document, but there's certainly a time period in there, whether it's annual or whether it's a little bit longer. I can't remember exactly, but it's certainly in the share offer document that it says what the term is for somebody who would be elected onto the trust board. Basically, it's on there in the document, but I can't remember exactly what it says.
He's got to go up every 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's either 2 or 3 years. Yeah, but it isn't. I know it's in the document.
Okay. So has anybody approached you or inquired about the possibility of putting themselves forward for directorship if you did take over?
Not that I'm aware of. In that respect,
Just shows how sought after.
Yeah, that's what sort of. And I think
They're not banging the door down.
no. I mean, certainly, I'm not aware of anybody who's come and said I would like to be, or I would like to be considered for X, Y, and Z. What we have had a lot of, which we're very grateful for, is for volunteers who've got some brilliant skill sets that can help us in the way that Sean was suggesting earlier on, and we certainly welcome that. I mean, you know, when you look at any board, and certainly one where it's made up of all volunteers, you know, at times it's a bit of a thankless task because everybody's got an opinion on it. You don't actually get anything for it per se, in terms of what you would get in your normal working life. And what we've got to ensure through the whole democracy is the fact that those that are sitting on the board are those that the fans want. It's as simple as that for me, in terms of that. But I'm not aware. Are you aware of anybody who said they?
And I think to be honest, we're probably at the stage before that at the moment. So it's getting the working group setting up, getting the interim board running, and getting people to participate and work with us on that as well. And then I think probably over the next few months, as that develops, you'll naturally see people come through then that will want to put themselves forward for the trust board. Then
I think once you know as well, once October comes and, you know, if we've done it, then I think you'll see people, you know, they'll come forward then as well and think, yeah, I can do that job, I'd like to have a go at that, or I hope they do anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I mean, I think we've all
what
said
it's
it,
all about.
and I said a little bit earlier, it's not about us at all. If people come along, they've got better skill sets and the fans want them, fantastic, as long as it's for the good of the club.
Yeah.
That's absolutely what we need.
Okay. Obviously, Tony, you're interim chairman at the moment. Do you plan to put yourself forward to be permanent chairman?
No.
Or does
No,
anybody
I don't.
else on the current trust board want to put themselves forward?
To be honest, no, I don't. I certainly not. I don't think the eventual model going forward would actually need to have a chairman in that sense on the operational board.
Yeah.
You know, the CEO will be the empowered person, and they'll be supported by a five-man operational board, which could have a trust member, it could have someone else as well, and it could have a FD on there as well. So we're still looking down that route, really.
I don't think
this
there's-
is going
yeah,
all
or a woman, yeah.
Does it?
I
Sorry?
don't think there's been anything in here that required a chairman, have there?
No.
A chairman type person, you know, It's more a committee
I-
model.
I think it would be fair to say there's you can't avoid having a little bit of a vacuum here and a little bit of a gap in the leadership side of it because of the way events have developed. It would have been a lot more straightforward in some ways for us just to carry it on as a trust operator,
Yeah,
without having to be
yeah.
an interim board as well. But we're working closely with Jason now. We understand the rules of engagement, and it's worked well over the last week, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Very well, actually.
It's
So
certainly improved.
it's not really about us, but the model will work.
You know, in this type of setup, obviously, there's always got to be a central figure that people would have to turn to for leadership, shall we say. Would you say Jason, the CEO, would be that central figure?
Well, Jason, I mean, in our mind, you know, Jason is the CEO of the club, and therefore Jason is responsible for the operational running of the club and making sure that the targets that he and indeed the team have been set are met. And Jason then is accountable to the owners board, and the owners board then will have a number of people on it, which is in effect the trust board as well, which is where we get the democratic elections from and come into that, because it you know, Jason needs to be accountable somewhere for things that he is doing, and he needs to meet the targets that have been set, and if not, then we need to have discussions and we need to help him, we need to consider that. But in terms of the day-to-day operational running of the club and that leadership and the strength of the club, that's absolutely Jason, but also with the good team that he's got around him. He can't do it all himself. He's only as good as the team he's got, and he's got to get that team working with him in the right way. And as a result of that, we'll see the off-the-field activities improving as we go forward. And I think we're quite clear on that as a model. The one thing that we have tried not to do since we've come on board as the interim board, and indeed what we'll do going forward, we do not want to interfere in the day-to-day running of the club. It's pointless employing a CEO if then we want to act as a CEO, or we've got a shop manager and we think we should be going and running the shop. That's not what this is about. That's not the way boards operate. You know, Jason has got to be empowered to do the things that we're asking of him with his team, and he's got to have our support to do that with the direction and guidance. And then if he doesn't achieve that, he's got to come back and explain why they've not been achieved and what he needs to achieve it. You know, because performance has to be key.
I think that's important. I think even though we're only interim board, and to be fair, it looks as though we've been put in a position where when people might think that we haven't got any input or influence, that actually isn't true. And Jason isn't just running the football club on his own, he is supported by us as well. So the perception that it's just Jason with layers pulling some strings is not actually true now. It's probably taken us a couple of weeks to adapt to the fact that we've actually got to fulfil that role that we've been put in, because it's probably a bit of a shock, but you know, that's happening now. So again, it's about that. It's difficult to give that visibility to people out there at the moment, but it is happening, and it's confidence around the structure.
Yeah,
certainly
absolutely.
Not us as
And
individuals, the structure of work.
We've had a board meeting tonight with Jason and other members of his team. Been very constructive in the stuff that we've covered off. We've majored on the commercial side of life in terms of where the deals are today, and some of the opportunities that we think that are around there. You know, we've got a great guy in James who's able to drive that through. He needs a direction from us and the help from Jason to do that. And we felt tonight's board session around the commercial stuff was really, really positive as a result. So, you know, we again, in most things we're doing, we're looking at it in the half glass full. You know, we're positive about what we want to achieve. We know what we want to achieve. We've just got to push and push to get to that.
Okay. Obviously, the takeover happens. We complete it. We're going to be fan zoned. A lot of the grievances that a lot of fans have put forward through the summer. Will the board, moving forward after the takeover, have the power to sit down and review certain things? For example, I've got a few things like ticket prices, like the £2 extra you've got to pay on match days. People are saying they'd like to see that taken away, for example. Adjustment to match day experience, because it doesn't seem to be an awful lot that goes on. Renegotiating our terms with Rodney Parade, so we're getting something more out of match days. Things like beer sales, for example. Just basically addressing things that...
I did, again, the working group, where there'll be fan engagement, which Lisa will be heading up. one of the key aspects of that is consultation on season tickets. What doesn't mean there's going to be £5 a ticket next season, but there will be, and it needs to start now, because actually by after Christmas you'll be setting your prices for next season. So there needs to be consultation on that. What we're actively looking at is a grading system as well of games. It's sadly missing. I think, you know, a Portsmouth and Morecambe should have a different grading of prices as ticket games as well. So there needs to be far more innovation in ticketing prices, and that's only going to happen by starting that conversation with fans now and actually putting in place before Christmas.
I think the difficulty we've got to making immediate changes around things like ticketing prices, etc. We're guided by Jason, we're guided by the Football League, and as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's difficult to change pricing mid-season because it's been set already. But like all things, you know, we want to, with Jason, address as many issues as we can. We've got to be sensible about that, you know, in terms of what is a priority for today and what might be a little bit more downstream. But as Sean says, and you know, the whole governance model about the fans' experience, the supporters groups, the contributing to each of the functions that we've got is really, really key, and that's going to be the vehicle for people to have a voice in what we're trying to do, along with the other partnership type activity that David Handel is already running around those as well, because I think they're key to keeping all the groups involved and engaged to make sure they have that say, and rightly so.
I think it's important as well that at the moment probably a little bit of patience whilst we concentrate on raising the finances, and we're not owners yet. I think there's probably the perception sometimes, you know, nothing's changed, nothing's going to change. You know, if we're successful, and we think we will be, then there will be changes, and we will implement this, and things that we've committed to will actually happen.
And I think that's why we said, you know, at the launch, and we're developing that now, that we are going to put in place a 90-day plan, and that 90-day plan will address some of the issues that are around at the moment. But of course, like anything, you can't do everything overnight, and we need to prioritise those things in terms of where we've got the capacity and capability, and indeed the best return on investment for us to make those decisions as well. But what we want to be is transparent with those things, so people can see that there is a plan in place, or there's a vehicle for people to address the issues that they may or may not have.
I think at the last open meeting, I think the share launch, obviously someone said it's our responsibility to obviously put ourselves out to the people of Newport to drag them over here. I mean, one of the things, when I've been speaking to people, is people are comparing our prices to the rest of the league, but people are not comparing prices to the affordability of the people in Newport, because it is a rather poor city. We were hit by the recession pretty hard. So I think what people want is an affordable day that offers something a little more than just 90 minutes of football.
Do you find our prices much different?
Do I find them much different? I know
You
I
go
paid a bit.
to all away games. Do you find our pricing is that much different?
Well, in comparison to the rest of the league.
I think it's part of it is not just about pricing. I think it's about value for money and match day experience, and I just think that's probably the way I'd want to target it. And there's little support in entertainment apart from the match. So the family aspect and the attraction, the value for money, and what you actually get, potential family tickets. I think that's been totally ignored, really.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also, you know, and I say it sounds basic, but you know, a bit of half-time entertainment, for instance, you know, in whatever that may well be. We talked about that previously. You know, it just gets a bit more interest in things, and it is part of an experience. And some of the things we've talked about as well, and we were talking about them earlier on, is that, you know, if you think you've got almost, and again, and Tony's going to be driving some of this forward as part of the fundraising responsibilities, you know, each of the groups do some really good stuff. We want to make sure that's coordinated, so everybody gets their fair shout at running an event. But then we almost looking at saying, you know, shouldn't there be two big events, one at Christmas, for instance, and more so one at the end of the year? You know, we've got a great space outside there. Couldn't you have a great fan experience on the last home game of the season, and the money that we generate from that can help us through the close season, where things are pretty tight because there's no income coming in. So, you know, for me, all that sort of stuff we need to put together, and I think the more people we engage, the more ideas that we have, the more it'll generate the interest, and we can fan it all out.
I also think it's a great opportunity to work closely with the rugby on some of their events as well, and working it around games on the weekend where we're both working over that weekend and put some joint events on and
Yeah,
jointly
of course.
benefit from it. That's been totally
I mean,
underexplored.
we all share the same home. There's no reason why we can't
Yeah.
share the same match day experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you said about half-time entertainment, pre-game entertainment, and there's always the possibility of putting something on over there before the game, which would bring people into the ground earlier.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And again, it goes back to my earlier point about we just got to prioritise these things in terms of what we're trying to achieve, so that if we do them properly, you know, and we do execute them well, and people say, do you know what, that was a really good experience, I'm going to go back next week,
Yeah.
but I'm going to bring 3 friends back
Yeah.
with me next time because it was really good, really enjoyed it, whatever it may well be.
You know, I don't get this that you should almost, you know, okay, we've got core fans that'll turn up here every weekend regardless of what, but they're not going to propel this football club forward. We're battling for the leisure pound. We've got to accept it. We can't sort of berate fans for not coming and spending their hard-earned money if the entertainment and the experience isn't reflective of paying 20 quid, or if they come with a family,
absolutely.
nearly 100 quid.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's got to change, and it's up to the club and us to change that and make it an enjoyable experience and make people want to come back.
No, absolutely so. Yeah.
And obviously, Tony, you asked me a question I didn't get to answer.
Yeah.
Obviously, in comparison to everywhere else I've gone, I mean, obviously you go to places like Cambridge and their tickets are higher, but then I say Cambridge is a richer city than what Newport is.
Yeah.
So their locals, obviously 6,000 of them were there at their first home game when they played against us.
Yeah.
They say that, you know, the money,
Yeah.
there's more money in Cambridge than there is in Newport. They can afford 20 quid.
Have you gone anywhere this year where you've paid cheaper?
That's the thing. Well, obviously I went to Cambridge, I went to Wolves. Obviously Wolves was,
Yeah, it's
you
different.
know,
Yeah.
an incentive to bring their own fans in, you know, for
Yeah.
a small club coming.
But I think your point is well taken in terms of the fact that, you know, it's just not the pricing structure, it's the demographic that goes
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
So, you know, and as I say, although it'd be difficult to do something mid-term as we understand it from the Football League rules, it's definitely, as Sean says, something when we're starting to plan, and if it is us for next year, you know, we've got to make sure we get that stuff right. We absolutely believe you should be categorising games without a shadow of a doubt. You know, if you've got a Tuesday night here against somebody who's from up north,
Or something.
you know, should people be paying 20, 22 quid? Probably not. I mean, you're not going to attract them there. And you can look at other things that others have done, like Bradford City have done this season. You know, so there's lots of things about. But I think the key thing for us is that we do consult people through the model that we're putting in place, you know, to get that right balance. And let's be fair about it. We're never going to please everybody, you know, and I think that's just a fact. You know, a football club, everybody has an opinion, and rightly so. It's an emotive setup, and we accept all that. But I think what we need to do is to make sure that democracy does rule, and if we go through the groups and people have stood up and be part of that governance, you know, if we reach a decision as X, then, you know, we go with that decision knowing that everybody is comfortable with what we've got at that particular time. But I do think we need to look at that without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay. Also, you mentioned events. Are we going to be looking to actually plan events, club-run events that are actually going to be affordable, not a £50 dinner to go and have a 3-course meal and see Kevin Keegan where
I think
people can't afford it?
That's what we'll talk about next week, Chris. I think we'll sit down together. You know, there will be the posh dinners, there will be the discos, there'll be something in between. You know, we'll all work together at that.
Posh
The
dinners.
discos.
The
Yeah,
discos.
yeah, the discos, isn't it?
I don't know, what's a disco?
The discos.
Disco.
Yeah.
I read it through.
But you know what I mean, yeah.
Yes.
Something for everyone.
Yeah. Of
It'll
course.
be, you know, we'll talk about that, and we'll, you know, figure out, you know, we plan to have a calendar basically, you know,
Yeah.
so there's not too many in one go. And
So I think we're
you
just
know, and
confirming
just work out
working
the-
groups to kick off next Monday.
Yeah.
So obviously open to supporters clubs, volunteers as well. So if anyone else wants to look at this, wants to join it as well, let us know. So it's an open meeting, but not an open meeting. So in reality, we can't have sort of 500. It's not a 500 event, but if
I mean,
people
what-
want to come and contribute, just let us know. Really.
Yeah, we need them to tell us in advance so that we know that we've got enough space to be allocated. We know what we're looking to do on the evening, etc.
And the format is
around
going to be
that.
pretty straightforward. Just the management structure of how it works, what working groups emanate out of that, and then people will go off for an hour in the rooms down here, the boxes that we got available to us there. Work at probably getting 3 key targets that they want to concentrate on over the next 3 months, and that will be the way each working group will work and conduct themselves going forward.
But I think, sorry, to go back to your point about the 50 quid stuff, etc. I think, again, you know, we've got to be mindful of the demographic again. But as Tony rightly points out, some people will be happy with 50 quid meals, other people won't, and it might well come down to different events, but they all contribute to the same thing. And I think the important thing for me is that when we're putting these things together, we should be mindful of the audience that people are trying to hit at that time, whatever that may well be. And most importantly, what we need to make sure of every event that we run, we understand what our cost is, we understand what we're trying to achieve, and we understand that we make some money out of it. You know, because I think sometimes, you know, we've done these things in the past where perhaps we just look to put an event on, but actually what benefit is it given us, whether it be reputational, profile, or whatever. But we've got to set these things out properly.
I mean, think, remember, obviously football has always historically been a working man's pastime.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously you've got to think
Let's get
along
it back there.
working man's budgets.
And ladies.
Budgets.
No, I just saying his girlfriend's over
Yeah.
there. He's saying working man.
Working man.
She's not going to be speaking to him.
Working person,
Working.
no, no.
Yeah.
Working person.
Working person.
But
Equal opportunities and
Yeah.
that.
one thing is, whatever we do, it needs to be consistently priced as well. So
Yeah,
going
absolutely.
forward, that's the price, and we stick
Yeah.
with that, and not sort of discounting as well. So that
Especially my
actually
discos.
we've agreed on a pricing structure. We think it's an event that will work and is marketable and has benefits to people, then they'll be experiencing their joy, and I'd stick with it. So do it properly, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I think this is something that's quite an important question to ask. Transparency with a football club, for me, is a two-way street. Obviously, you'll be open with things, but then how open will you be to receiving feedback and concerns from supporters, and how will you look to prioritise them?
Very open. I mean, the natural vehicle will be fan engagement process through the working groups. That will be the national vehicle for that feedback. Again, there's always the informal feedback, and we're quite open to criticism, which we're inevitably going to get in whatever role we take in the future. We accept that, and it goes with the territory. So we're not going to please everybody, but as long, I suppose criticism is always better if it's constructive.
Yeah.
I think
You always get it, don't you?
lacking.
I think for me as well, on the transparency side of life, I always think, and I characterise it in almost three ways. There's things that we absolutely want to be transparent on and can be transparent on, and we absolutely should be. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there are certain things that will be difficult to be transparent on. So in other words, should we be transparent on the fact that player X earns X amount a week and his win bonus is X amount, and etc.? Well, the answer to that is no. In my mind, and people might disagree with that, and then there's something in between, in terms of, you know, there may well be a decision that it may well be under some kind of agreement that people don't want it to disclose, and they've done it on that basis, and therefore makes it quite difficult to do it. So, you know, you've almost got the legality at the bottom end, you shouldn't be doing it, and data protection, you shouldn't be doing it. Middle bit is a judgment call, the top end is as much as you can within those factors. And, you know, we've seen lots of stuff in social media where people, you know, are playing the transparency card quite a bit. You said you were going to be transparent, you're not on X, Y and Z. And I think people have got to be sensible about what that means. And our mantra is, where we can be transparent and share the information as much as we can, we absolutely do so. If there's a law that prevents us from doing that, whether it be data protection or something else, then we won't be able to do that. Otherwise, we'll put the club into a difficult position, and indeed ourselves. And then if there's a middle ground to it, and it's a judgment call, and we can share it, then we absolutely will. I suspect we'll be criticised for a lot of that, and I can understand it. People got to be sensible about it as well. I mean, if I asked you today what you earn in an hour, you might be happy to tell me, you might not be, I don't know. But not everybody is comfortable with that, and it is personal to somebody. So I think we just got to get the balance right with it.
Yeah, of course, I mean, obviously, I could be comfortable telling you how much I earn, but it's not a requirement of my company to go
Exactly.
public with what I earn.
Yeah,
I
absolutely
understand
agree.
completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the community work, Norman and his team, obviously get Gareth being part of that as well. I've obviously done some fantastic work.
Yeah.
How will you be hoping to enhance and expand on that if you had to take over?
Well, I probably, a couple of things. I think, as you say, it's probably one of the best functioning parts of the football club at the moment. So Gareth supporting that. It's just probably adding a few more volunteers and taking it to the next level and some more support there and people there. I think probably we could do more with, say, not-for-profit organisations from the community aspect and bringing them in and giving them a nominated day. So obviously it wouldn't be perhaps a match sponsor, but give them some exposure to the people that actually over here as well. So I think there's some potential to develop that side as well, and getting, as well as getting close to the business community again.
And I also think, though, I mean, Norman and the guys and Gareth, etc., have done a great job. And we can learn a lot from that as well. It's been very successful in terms of what they've done. We're certainly, want to engage with them, as you rightly say. Gareth's on our board and wants to continue in the work that he's done. And I think they've done some fantastic
I think
things.
Norman's been excellent, hasn't he?
Absolutely.
I think everybody at the club knows that and agrees with that.
Yeah, absolutely so.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the worst case scenario now. That we don't manage to reach our target and take over the club. What effectively will happen? Say you come on, is it 28th of September, the deadline? On that day,
30th, yeah.
well, the 30th, so it's
Because we've got
till
the
the end of the month.
Yeah, end of the
Crawley
month,
game
yeah.
room.
So come that day, you announce that we've not reached our target, that the takeover bid has failed. What effectively happens from there?
Well, I think what we said on this is, and there's a number of kind of sequence of events. I mean, if supporters director was here today, they'd probably be saying, well, it depends how much we're away from the target. Could we do something? Could we do X? Could we do Y? I think we're probably a bit hesitant to a certain extent around that, because we've set out to hit a target. We want to hit that target. We still believe that we will hit that target. But if we don't, and we can't do anything else, and I think we've said collectively, not to put words in the guys' mouths, that we would resign as directors of the board as we sit today. And there isn't a plan B per se. The club is owned by Les. He's the majority shareholder, and he would make a decision as to what he wants to do with that club. Now, Les has been very open with us to say there isn't a plan B in terms of others waiting in the background to buy it, given the situation of the club. And that's why, really, for me, it is really paramount that everybody gets behind it, and as Tony rightly says, puts their money into the shares, knowing that they might, if we don't hit it, they will get their money back. So, it's really key we do achieve it for those very reasons. But that's the kind of sequence of events that will happen at that time.
So then could you highlight any specific dangers that the club would be in? I mean, there's the obvious ones, but then can you highlight anything that's specific?
Well, I think Les has made it perfectly clear he's not going to put any more money in. That's clear. And as we've said, the reason our target was set in the way it was is the fact that the club needs the working capital pretty much immediately from the overdraft perspective and other things that are going out for the club. And the benefits that Sean mentioned earlier on have to service the club through the season. So, I mean, you can draw that conclusion from there. The fact is the club will then not have that revenue that it needs at the moment for it to survive.
I think the other worrying thing then is obviously Les can do, what he wants to do with his shares, which could mean, anybody coming in, nobody except Les. He's the only one that can, will be able to tell you that.
Suppose you could look at
But
it.
I'd be a bit worried that, they got into the wrong hands.
Yeah, exactly. But then it could end up in the right hands.
Could.
That's
do.
the
Could
other
do.
one.
Could go
But then at least
anyway.
being fans owned, we know for certain
It'd
it's
be
in the
your
right
club,
hands then. Yeah. Okay. So I think you've mentioned this, so probably no point, but I will ask anyway. Are
Just
you
to
aware,
make sure you make the same answers you did earlier, is it?
are you aware of anybody lurking, hoping that we fail, ready to step in?
Well, I don't think, certainly with our conversations we've had with Les, and we take him on his word that there isn't a plan B, there isn't anybody else in the background. I think that, and oddly enough, one of the things we've said all the way along in this is the fact that we should have had a fly on the wall. We should have had Glyn following this round actually on this, because at times some of the things that we see, it makes you think there must be somebody else in the background trying to derail the things because it gets so difficult every day. Why are things so difficult? It doesn't surely need to be this difficult, does it? So it does make you think like that a little bit, as if you're in a live episode of CSI Files or something. So, you know, but we have no knowledge today that there are anybody lurking in the background, but you can go into speculation heaven in terms of the fact that relationships of X has got with Y. Was Peter Risdale at that the open meeting that somebody suggested? Well, we don't believe it was because we've been told he was on holiday. But you know, there's loads of things that will go around, and everybody will have an opinion on it. I do think, in my mind, that some people perhaps start those rumours as part of an intent to make it a little bit more difficult and derail a little bit more difficult. But you know, that's for them to answer those questions at that time. What we're saying today is that we have no knowledge that there's anybody else in the background who wants to come in and do what we're doing. And in fact, what we've always said, if that is the case, and they can do something that's better than what we're offering, then you know that would be fantastic. As long as it was for the best for this club, then you know we're not going to fight people on that. That you know that has to be the
model,
thing.
wouldn't we? If it was.
I think one of the plus points and the positives is how this has re-energised supporters and the trust as well over the last 2 months. So I think even if that scenario did develop, then I think the trust would want to play a full part in the future running of the football club, whatever happens at the moment.
That's funny enough. My next question: what would happen to the supporters' trust? Would the supporters' trust feel the need to disband if they don't take over,
no,
or would they
I mean,
continue?
My view, unless someone came in with a totally different view of running of the football club, I think the working groups and the way of actually running the football club and actually getting people to feed in and getting to have input from a variety of different sources gives the club the resilience going forward it's never had. So for me, that should happen whatever happens with the football club, and
Exactly
I'll
that.
carry on supporting that whatever happens to the football club.
I mean, the governance, you know, is really, really key to all of this, because it, for the first time, embraces the fans in the right way. Not just by saying, can you put your hand in your pocket and do X and do Y, but it's the right consultation around fans' experience, around fundraising, around the policies, everything, basically, you know, that people probably have an opinion on, but have never been given a route or a channel in to actually offering the skills that they've got outside. So Sean's absolutely spot on. Whoever, if we weren't successful and somebody else came in, if they didn't adopt that model, you know, you'd have to question whether they were right for the club, because the one thing it does is embrace as much of the fan base as possible.
I think it goes back to what we said earlier, where if they wanted to come in and put money into the football team, and the trust were over here fundraising, you know, and helping run the club, I think basically they're the same model. It's just at the moment the trust are leading it, where it could be investors leading it with the trust, you know, joining them. So
You know, the model is
gonna
the
be
model.
basically
The
the same
model's a
then.
model, and it can work wherever the ownership relationship with the football club is, as long as both parties want to adopt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, at the moment, we're just focused on our job. Supporters Direct said there'd be other rumours all the way through, or something else is out in the background. So we're just trying to ignore that and just carrying on and being focused on what we've got to do.
And they were absolutely correct. There's no doubt about that. They were correct. But Sean's right. You know, you can spend forever trying to work out things that probably don't exist or only exist in the speculation mind and whatever that may well be. You know, we're focused on raising the money that we need to do to take over the club that we love. We're putting that governance model in place with you guys, and we think that is for the best for the club. And we just want everybody to get behind us, as they have done, in terms of joining the trust, but also in terms of acquiring those shares, because that's what gets us over the line at the end of the day. And hopefully, you know, when we get there at the end of the month, we'll have a big push then on the match against Crawley, but then 2 days later we'll hopefully be there with a celebration to say we've got it over the line, it is now fan owned, thanks for everybody who's been involved in it, now the hard work starts and making it work in the way that we said it was going to.
And hopefully, if it happens, it could generate something of a buzz around the club.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That might end up having an effect on the pitch. We can only hope, can't we?
We can only hope.
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed is there is the ridiculous notion that a few people that believe, very, very few, and like I said, it is a ridiculous notion that folding and starting from scratch again is our best option. Especially then, if we are relegated, we're pretty much more or less starting from scratch again anyway. Well, how would you
cost?
respond to that?
Well, it's not a zero cost option. It's not a zero option in terms of the not just the finance, but the time actually doing that. So the people that were around, like myself, and I think all of us around here, not yourself, Chris, but in '89 with David, it wasn't an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. Would there be the appetite and the willingness to go through that again? Would we be allowed to just do that and enter any league, even if it was 7 or 8 leagues below? I just find it a bit bizarre, really.
I think that the league now, for a club that's doing it again, I think it would not go down too well, and I think you'd struggle to start again.
I mean, the assumptions on what ground we would use, the assumptions, what would we just go to Spitley and we'll just redevelop that and not consider what the council wants or what the cost associated with that is?
I mean, in my mind, that whilst I do understand why some might think that way, it quite frankly is barking mad. I absolutely think it's barking mad that we've honestly got people who think that actually shutting up the shop and going and starting again in whatever league it may well be, God knows how many leagues down the tier, to start and go through the same journey that you've been over the last 25 plus years. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And as Sean said, there's all the practical implications of it, where the ground, the employees, the fan base, everything. Why would you want to do that? It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
For me, I think there was just too many people when we were in Conference South days who just saw Newport County as a cushy little cheap day out for them and their family, to sit on or stand on a terrace with a cup of tea and then just watch a game of football. I mean, obviously the fan experience has intensified a lot more from them days. I
still look back fondly on them. It's not, it was a good experience for football. I don't want to go back there though. No. And I think also, I mean, some of what I find sometimes maybe being a bit disingenuous about the debt. The legacy debt is a big number, but to suggest it's not manageable is perhaps bordering on misleading or disingenuous, because it's not a 370k debt to 2 individuals paid immediately. It's structured in a way. Okay, fair enough, you can have a comment on whether long term that debt is manageable and affordable, but to suggest that that debt needs to be paid straight away and is an impossible target is misleading and wrong.
Misleading,
I think people are maybe possibly thinking that the 200,000 we're trying to collect is going to be handed over straight away, and that's and it's not going to be like that. That's a working capital in that as well.
Legitimate questions over the debt, and legitimate questions about, do you want to pay over 8 years 300k at interest free? Legitimate question on that. People are responsible. Having a view on that is totally acceptable. Whether it's permissible to saddle yourself with a debt of say 30k a year or so. What's not right is to give a misleading suggestion almost that it needs to be paid immediately, which is impossible.
Which is absolutely not the case. And as you know, when we laid out that at the share offer launch, we were very open about the position we were in, and in my mind, and when you look back in the history of the club, we were probably more open than it's ever been in its history. So we are trying to do that, and that allows fans to make the decision as to whether we want to support it or not. But the notion for me of shutting up shop and going back is, as I said, is barking mad in my view. And I people are entitled to their opinions, and I'm entitled to mine, and I think it's completely nuts.
Obviously, being at this level where we are right now, we're a cup run away or a couple more Regan balls away from being able to pay off that debt anyway.
Well, absolutely so. I mean, if you look at Cambridge, you mentioned Cambridge, we went their first game of the season, and you think of their budget that they got this year. Why is their budget like it is this year? It's like it because of the fact they had the cup run they did, and they played Man United home and away. So, significant revenue that came in from the season before. They spent it on improving, their ground, etc. And they've got a good fan base as well. But you're absolutely right. You are only one cup run away on those things. For me, it just, I just have a real issue with. I can't understand, in my mind, the logic of doing something like that. I can't understand what it achieves. it just beggars
The,
belief
the,
for me.
the difficulty side is there's never really a return on investment in getting involved with a football club. So Les put in a serious amount of money in, close to about 2 million, and not getting hardly any return on it. So, okay, we may have to pick up some of the legacy debt associated with that, but there is an upside of it. There's an upside with Reagan Pool, with sell-on clauses that they will come back to the club. There's the assets that are actually developing through the youth team and Aaron Collins, and not going for a derogatory sum because we think he's worth more than that. So there is some upside, and you know that upside we feel is there to manage a debt of say 30 odd K a year. What we do have to look at is we feel we've got enough time to put everything in place to make sure we stay up, which is vital, but we still go and safeguard the interest of football club and relegation proof what we're doing as well.
I mean, it's interesting. Somebody said to me, you know what your best asset is at Newport County? And I said, what? He said, the fact that you're in the Football League at the moment. That's your best asset, because you get Football League revenue that comes in. You're also in a position whereby you can have a good cup run. You've also got the revenue in from being in the Football League with the big teams that come here and play. So, you know, wanting to move away from that is slightly strange in my view.
Just to sort of the perhaps make sure that there's no view out there that as a trust taking over we're not lacking ambition and just want to take over the football club for the sake of it. We believe that we can make this football club better and put things in place that could actually make a club that can improve the amount of fans, improve the match day, improve the amount of people that come over here and progress the club as well. We don't want to just take over as a trust for the sake of it. We do believe in it. We're ambitious and we don't want to be a non-league club again. We want to be a football league club. And whatever we can do to collectively, all of us, I think, whatever we can do to make sure we retain that status, we should fight all the way for.
Excellent. This question is not one I particularly want to ask, but I feel an obligation to because it's the feedback I'm getting from the fan base, and I say it's not something that's a concern of mine. But if we do continue our bad form, where will you stand on the position of our current team management? How do you feel you will deal with it if a big decision has to be made? Like I say, and I'll say this straight, it's not something I feel
I think
over to you, Terry.
But,
I think though that you know if we're in situ at a time where a decision like that needs to be taken, like anything in life, it's not personal.
No.
It's not personal to the manager or indeed anywhere else. But we're in a performance sport. The table speaks for itself, and you know it's quite clear that we need to improve. Now we think that we've got the right manager and a management team in place to do that, and hopefully you know that will start on Saturday. And let's be fair about it, the football we've played this season has probably been the best we've seen over here for years and years. Saturday's game was pretty dismal. We know that.
Everyone has their bad games.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was obviously a clear effect that once we went down, you could see the confidence drain.
Absolutely,
And I think
We
with
didn't
a young
have the
side,
best ref,
that
did we?
is an issue. I don't think it was the ref, to be honest. I think it's like the confidence side.
Yeah,
and
it
then,
went.
you know, you can
The
see
ball
it
game.
literally draining out and losing the shape. But you know, at the moment we're here to support what's going on.
Absolutely
But,
so.
you
And
know,
we think that we are able to, or the team is able to turn it around. We absolutely need them to do that for a variety of different reasons. But like everything in life, if you've got to have difficult conversations, we will have difficult conversations. And if we've got to have good conversations, we'll have good conversations. You know, it's a balance of those things. Terry is the manager. We've got absolute confidence in Terry as our manager with a management team, and hopefully he can, you know, get those players playing as they were in the first number of games, and we can have a bit of luck. You know, and the goals can start going in, and you know, we'll look back at it and think that was a difficult period, but you know what, we had the right management team in place, the right support, etc., and they got us out of it, and there we are still in the league, and that's exactly what we want.
I suppose at least we're in this position with 6 games in rather than with 6 games to go.
Absolutely so.
yeah, another 40 to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's all the questions I got. I was going to ask you guys if you've got any final words, any last things you'd like to say to the fans, and if you look directly at them, because they're the people who are going to be, who you're basically counting on to make this happen. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I'd like to say that, I mean, firstly, I think, you know, thanks very much for the level of support that we've had so far. To move from 3-2-4 up to over 1,500 members in a very short space of time is fantastic. So, you know, a big thank you for that, and a big thank you to all the volunteers and those that have stepped up, and the supporters groups. There are many of them who have, you know, helped, etc. within that as well. And the last thing I would say before I hand on to the guys is, if you're sitting on the fence, remember what we're trying to achieve here, and that is to make this club supporter owned. And if you can spare 50 quid, 100 quid, or contribute to what you're trying to raise, Chris, then please do that. We want to get to the position where we own this club for the good of the fans. We absolutely think it's the right model for it to be supporters owned, so we can actually sustain that future. But we can't do it without your support, basically.
I think the only thing I'll add to that is when the benefits rewards package and the monthly donations are coming out, is not to overlook that, because if we do get to a situation where we're quite close to that figure, if we can get commitments on there that people can't give a lump sum but can actually give £10 a month, actually that might be the critical factor. That might actually be what will actually secure us the deal, because if we can get long-term commitments, that helps with the sustainability side, so it would be a boost. So don't ignore that, because that will be a boost when it comes around to actually, if we didn't, which we feel we will at the moment, but if we didn't get to that lump sum figure, and of course, if we do smash it and we do get loads of benefits, well, we can invest in a team that makes it easier to stay up this season.
Yeah, of course.
And for me, just keep supporting the team, keep coming, keep buying your tickets, keep buying your 50-50 tickets, because that's all goes to help making it easier for us, really. I think that's about it, really. I think the boys have all said it all. It's just keep supporting, get off that fence and give us your money.
David might never get it. Might never get this
You'll
chance.
never
again,
get a
guys.
better chance.
Might never get
One
this
final
chance.
thing, Chris. Do you want to congratulate Tony on his forthcoming
Well, I
wedding?
didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
We got the scoop, guys. We got the scoop.
Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.
Tony's getting married.
June
Congratulations.
26th next year.
Free
Great
bar.
news, Tony.
Free bar, guys.
Yeah.
Free bar, everybody's invited.
Yeah.
You get a bigger crowd than what we get over here.
We are club, yeah. Cheers for that, mate.
Thanks,
Thanks
Chris.
a lot.
Thanks, Chris.
Cheers. Thank you,
Cheers,
mate.
good.
Yeah,
Top
it's
man.
good.
Well,
Good format.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Sorry you went.